So if we could, let's welcome him. Let's welcome today's show, our guest, live from Epiphan via Skype TX through the TriCaster TC1. It's George. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you, Gary?
Doing great. Thank you for coming on the show. We really appreciate when we have live guests. I think it makes for a better show. It's more enjoyable. Plus, a lot of times, sometimes I get stuff wrong, and you guys keep me in line. So today's show, we publicized it as a product roundup article, and that's what it is. It's a roundup article of the Epiphan products. We're going to feature the Pearl Mini, the Pearls, the Webcaster X2, and the AViO family of converters. But I think we want to break the show into a couple of parts, George, if we could. But the first part I'd like to do is say, hey, tell us about yourself.
Sure. So I manage the support department here at Epiphan. I also do a lot of the training for our partners as well as end customers. I work closely with our marketing group, our sales team, to really get the information out there. So I do a lot of things like this. I'm often on our weekly live show, which we do on Thursdays at 3 o'clock Eastern, talking about all things kind of streaming. And so, yeah, my face is kind of everywhere in terms of Epiphan material that's out there.
Cool. Thank you for being on our live show. And if we can ever return the favor, don't hesitate to ask.
I'm sure we will.
I want to jump right into the show because one of the main questions we get asked by our customers who are thinking about a Pearl or a Pearl Mini product is, which one's really right for me? So first I want to bring this chart we have full screen so people can just get a comparison of what's there. And that is basically the Pearl Mini, the Pearl 2, the Pearl 2 rack mount, and then the Pearl 2 rack mount twin. Now the rack mount twin, folks, is just two Pearls mounted side by side. So the feature specs are the same, but obviously all the I/O and outputs double because you have two Pearls working together. But the big thing is a lot of people say, what's right for me? Is it the Mini or the Pearl 2? Or do I need to step up to something a little bit bigger? Like we have the products right here. By bigger, I mean bigger. I mean, you can see the Mini is a nice little compact product, which I really love this product. I think this is one of the most novel products we have because it's an appliance that gives you switching, encoding, recording, and playback all in one. And this is the big brother, the original product, the Pearl 2, which is a rack-mountable product. Or this is the rack-mountable version. It's also available in a standalone version. Both have LCD screens, but you can see the LCD screen's a little bit bigger on the Pearl Mini rather than the Pearl, and that's because the screen on the Pearl Mini is intended for you to be able to actually operate and switch your show from if you're the talent, whereas the one on the Pearl you can use for that, but it's more for monitoring and for the system operator to go. So you're on here. I don't want to take all the thunder, but walk us through. I'm a corporate AV, no, better yet, I'm a government agency. I'm looking to do my government boardrooms, and we're going to get into all the verticals later, but I'm a corporate or a government AV or an educational AV. I know I need some mixing. I know I want a Pearl level product because I know I want something that's very easy to operate the day of the show that doesn't require a team of producers and directors, something that, the talent or a talent plus one guy can operate. But I'm not sure, which one should I get? I'd love to save the money and get the more inexpensive Pearl Mini, but I also don't want to cut my nose off to spite my face and end up, not having the power and performance I need.
Absolutely. So what we usually do, and my team here at Epiphan, we talk to our customers all the time with exactly the same question. And usually we start with, well, how many video inputs do you actually need? And the Pearl Mini is a great example of a product that was developed with the concept of something like a small live event or even lecture capture in an education institution in mind. That translates very well to the corporate industry as well, where you might have one or two, maybe up to 3 inputs, and really no more than that. And it's a great fit for those types of needs. We then look at how many encoded outputs do we need for live streaming and or recording, and that sort of pushes us into one model or the other as well. Pearl Mini, if we're doing mixing and switching, is a great product for doing up to 2 simultaneous encodes at up to 1080p. So if you're maybe doing one full screen ISO recording of your camera, but you also want to have a mixed and switched program out for your live stream, Pearl Mini suits that very well. But if someone's looking at maybe 3, 4, even up to 6 video inputs and up to 6 simultaneous encodes in various ways, that's where Pearl 2 really comes in.
Yeah, and one of the things that I want to mention also I think is important that differentiates is The Pearl 2 supports NDI, Mini not yet. Don't know if it will or won't, but I know it doesn't for now. But also the Pearl 2 supports 4K and 60 frame rate. So I want to talk about the 4K a little bit, because what we have found is that not everyone needs 4K today, but everyone's got a lot of 4K that they're producing with. What I mean by that is of the people we talk to and we sell to, I would say more than 50% of them have a camera that either is 4K or has the ability to have 4K, firmware upgrade. Also,
For sure.
we find that everyone, if you're going to buy a piece of glass, a TV monitor today, it's going to be 4K. I mean, who has
Absolutely.
Television monitors that aren't 4K? So the real workflow, as I see it, is that you want to be shooting in the highest resolution possible. You may want to have the highest resolution you can inside the venue, but when you're streaming and recording, really HD gets the job done. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, just like you said, 4K cameras, 4K TVs, they've gotten so inexpensive that you might as well buy them. Definitely starting with 4K is good. Downscaling is okay. Upscaling is generally bad. So starting with 4K and then coming down to full HD for our production workflow, especially for live streaming, is easy to do on something like the Pearl 2. We can do the downscaling in hardware. We can do it in the encoding stage. There's various ways we can manage that. The main thing is that live streaming 4K is expensive in the sense that it requires a lot of bandwidth to do well. And most people, especially if you're on site at a venue where you have to buy that connection from a conference room or center or a hotel, the cost of that could be extreme and it may be unreliable. So kind of looking at that and saying, do you really want to try to stream in 4K where your bit rates for your encoding are up around 20, 25, 30 megabit plus some overhead? You're very quickly looking at needing a 50 megabit upload speed.
And also what we found is with 4K downloading to your audience, they may not have it. They may have a big
Absolutely.
router in their house, but their kids could be playing a video game. You could be in a corporate area where 3 or 4 of you want to download. So you could stream 4K to a selected audience, but the truth is, I do not feel that the world is really ready for 4K streaming to the end customer, because a lot of times your audience, your main guy, isn't going to have the ability to get that 4K in all its picture glory. So what's going to happen? Well, depending on the CDN, it may just scale back down to HD if you're lucky, but what happens more often is it fights what it wants to do, and your viewer ends up seeing bad lip sync, choppy video, or pixelization, and then he automatically assumes that you're doing a bad job with your encoding, and that's not the truth, because no one ever says, oh, well, maybe 8 people on my block who have cable vision are downloading Netflix at the same time, and that's why I'm not getting the bandwidth that I'm supposed to get, because nothing's guaranteed in this world. So 4K,
and I think the other thing, and I think the other thing is you have to, like you're saying, know your audience. And most of the live streaming platforms that people are using today, let's take a Facebook or a YouTube. Facebook doesn't even support 4K at this stage anyways. YouTube does, but it's not used very much. On both of those platforms, if you look at the metrics, the vast majority of viewers use their smartphone. 4K on a smartphone, no one would be able to tell the difference between full HD and 4K. So there's no point, generally. Now, you might want to record in 4K or things like that for your archive. So there are some arguments where it could be used, but for live streaming, it's still an extreme bleeding edge thing.
However,
I
have one way where I think 4K is tremendous for live streaming. I want to show that a little bit. If we can go full screen, and that's using region of interest, and that's one of the things that the Pearl 2 can let you do, and that is I can have this larger 4K image, and I can pull out 4K shots from it and switch back and forth between them. Plus, I can go to the full screen shot that I had, and now it looks like I have a 3-camera shoot when I don't. This is something very useful when you're in a tight space, you can't get a room. I look at this as like for a bar with a venue that wants to maybe have some kids playing in a concert. You can have a single 4K camera that now can look like it's bigger. It's also really cool for a boardroom situation, or maybe it's a government boardroom or a corporate boardroom. You don't need a camera operator. You don't even need a PC camera. You could just use 4K region of interest. So that's one of those features that I hype a lot as something that I
Absolutely.
think people should look into, and I ask all my vendors to make sure they have in their product. So kudos for you guys for putting that in with the
Yeah.
Pearl too. Smart
And it's
work.
so easy to do on the Pearl tool with its cropping ability. You can customize whatever you want to do out of that. So it makes it very easy to configure and set up. You can switch between all your different cropped versions and just make it the content you want it to be.
Perfect. Now, I want to switch gears from product, and we'll talk about product later because I think we're going to have some time at the end of the show specifically. And I want to talk about how we're using the products, what we're doing with the products, because regardless of which level of investment and what you get with the Pearl and the Mini and the AViOs and the Webcast Rex 2, they're all intended for different people to be doing different stuff. And they're all really great products. Like the Webcaster X2 is just a point-to-point. Get your camera out there and shoot. But compared to a smartphone, you know, it's a million times better. The AViO is great if you have any software running on a laptop. Maybe it's Wirecast, maybe it's vMix, maybe it's OBS. It doesn't matter. You use the AViO, you come into a PC or a Mac, you get video. And once again, the Pearls are appliances that do their own thing. But now let's talk about the different types of video situations that fits. And the number one is live event production. Now, that's a big catch-all, and it includes, you know, school events, startup, concerts, award shows, eSports, anything you want to produce live. And I'm going to call this the big umbrella category that I think I want to jump right in and dig into some of the deeper categories, because anything you produce live is technically a live event. I mean, this show is a live event. I wouldn't call it an event, but it's live.
Absolutely.
So the first vertical I want to talk about where we see Epiphan products really fitting in great is corporate video. And you know, that's people are using it for training, they're using it for product spotlights, they're using it for corporate communications. Talk about how some of your products are being used in corporate video.
Yeah, so in this category, we kind of see a little bit of everything. Usually the Pearl, maybe the AViOs, depending on the level of sophistication of a particular company's setup and what they're doing. We're starting to see things like the Pearl used more and more, where they can install it in a boardroom or a small event space they have inside the company, or bring it with them to a hotel ballroom, set it up to record and live stream those events. We have customers in the corporate world who are doing the quarterly CEO speech to all the employees, and they're live streaming that so that everybody sitting at their desk can watch that live stream and make sure that they're staying in touch with the larger corporate culture, if you will. But sometimes it's recording product demos. Live streaming those product demos. You know, we do a lot of that ourselves internally for our own products. And yeah, just making sure that, you know, in this day and age, video is so important to everything that everyone is doing, and it's becoming more and more important. So making sure that people have the tools to deliver that video content however they see it, whether it's recorded or streamed, that's kind of what we're aiming for, is to make sure we have a model that's going to fit whatever it is someone needs.
Awesome. And one of the things I want to do a little segue product plug here to talk about, this really applies in corporate and education video. You know, there are other companies that make products similar to what the Epiphan products do. You're not unique. You know, there's probably 5 or 6 companies that make converters like this, but I'm going to guarantee you one thing. No one else makes a converter. Oh, I picked up the wrong one. This solid, this strong, this good, this dependable. I mean, you guys built this not for consumer streaming at all. This was really designed for medical imaging and corporate and even military applications originally, and then streaming came about. And I don't think people understand, you know, this thing, and the Pearls as well, they're built really rugged. If you're in a corporate environment, education environment, where this is going to be moving room to room, put in a pack, come out, kids are going to be touching it, people are going to be dropping it and full like that. This just works and works and works. It doesn't require any drivers or setup. And I can't plug Epiphan enough for the reliability, ruggedness, and overall just ease of use that these AViOs have, and the Pearl as well.
Well, it's funny enough, I actually got a competitor device to the AViOs this morning delivered, and I was checking it out and playing around with it. I won't say which company it is. Very plastic, very cheap feeling. You know, things rattle inside the case, you know, and it just didn't feel good in the hand. And, you know, is it a little bit less expensive than an AViO? Yeah, it is. But, you know, it didn't feel good. It didn't feel like I could throw it in a bag and take it with me. It felt like I should put it somewhere in a glass case and never touch it. That's not our design philosophy.
No, and let's talk about this. We're talking about live video, right? So let's say I get a cheaper version of this from a competitive product that heats up, that doesn't, have a good solid connector. It's a flimsy connector, or that can be, knocked and cracked easily. Well, guess what? They're not going to redo that live event, be it a sporting event, be it a graduation, be it the brand new announcement of a brand new product to your, to the 18 franchises you have, that there's a new version of a sandwich that everyone should be making and getting. And the point of live is it's live. You can always fix it in post for the download, but the live show is the live show. And I'm sorry, that's not the place to save $20, $30, $40, or even $50. I mean, invest in the right gear to do your live show. You're not going to regret it, folks. I can't stress that enough.
And that's our philosophy here at Epiphan. We realize when people are doing things live, you have one shot, and you need to make sure that you're relying on gear that's going to work in that one shot, and it doesn't bring you down.
And Crew asked, what's the difference between the AViO and Elgato or anyone else? The converters are general converters. The video quality, when they work 100%, is generally the same, because we're going to H.264. It's a given spec. At that bandwidth, it is what it is. What makes the AViOs better is the ruggedness, the stability, the spec levels they're built to, the way they handle their own heat, the way they handle outside thermals, the way they handle being jostled around. I can't recommend anything higher than an AViO for a USB, HDMI, SDI, or 4K converter. I just can't.
With the AViOs, we have quite literally on our own live show driven over them with cars, set them on fire, went swimming in a pool with them, smashed them with sledgehammers, and they worked afterwards.
Yeah, I think we sent them to space too, right?
There is the KVM to USB, one of our more niche converters, is on the International Space Station, yes.
So this is what we're built for. Let's talk about education a little bit, because education is something that goes beyond these devices. So I want to start very easily by talking about, you got lectures, online courses, recordings, and interaction, but this is the tip of the iceberg for education. Where it really gets to be the next level is when you integrate these products with things like Kaltura and Panopto. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so we see all of our products used in the education market, but for us, a big focus, of course, is with the Pearl products, and we've added direct integration for Kaltura and Panopto. And for those not familiar with those names, Kaltura and Panopto are content management systems. Essentially, the main platform that is going to host, manage, and deal with all of the content being generated in a lot of different ways. And so a lot of universities, enterprise corporations, things like that, will use these as a central place to store and manage all of that video data. For education, it means they can put their entire class schedule into the content management system, automate the start, stop, and recording of all of that on the Pearl, have the file sent back to the content management system where the students are going to consume it or use it. And it just really brings all of the various different points together, whether it's e-learning or archival, or someone missed the class that day and they need a copy of it. All of that's get brought together. And for us, we're providing the encoding side. We're capturing whatever video signals you have. Maybe it's multiple cameras, maybe it's specialized video signals, recording, streaming, getting that data where it needs to be in a very easy to use and reliable way. And when you're set up with the full integration, the Pearls essentially become fully automated. You don't even have to really touch them. They just take commands from the schedule and get things where they need to go.
And that's what I want to talk about on this. And the person who's got a picture of this isn't necessarily a high school, but let's say you're a college. You could be a small local college, community college, a D2, D3, or all the way as a big school like Ohio State or USC. But where this really comes in is you could deploy multiple Pearls of different levels throughout your classrooms. Now you have the schedule with the teacher. The teacher walks in, the professor, he just takes his laptop, plugs his PowerPoint in, so it becomes one of the inputs, comes up, it's already been set up that 5 minutes before the course it went on. Wherever it's supposed to stream and record, it's going to the right place. When he leaves, it's going to turn off. His presets are going to be in there for him the way he likes to run the show. So all the professor has to do is teach. He doesn't have to worry about being a technician. The stuff happens automatically, doesn't have to even turn the machine on and off. And better than that, now when it comes time for the students to watch the video later, not only can they view any of the video clips later, but both these products offer the ability where the student can actually select, I want to look at camera one. I want to look at the professor's camera. No, I just want to look at the PowerPoint at this point. So they have a sophisticated, you can take what the teacher's mix that he gave to the lecture, but also the students can mix the way they want it their own. And this is a very powerful tool that schools and universities are starting to unlock. And this is the tip of the iceberg for this, folks, because I'm telling you what I understand from some of the sales we've had into these levels is that the last thing the teachers want to be is technicians, and the last thing the technicians want is the teachers touching the gear. So it's the perfect combination of everything. And I think if you're going to lay it out and make distance learning a part of your school's appeal, you know, most schools are doing it now, but maybe as a small school you're not, but you want to. It's just a great thing to do. Plus, recording the content means the kids who want to review it later can watch the thing later. And, you know, with the generation of these younger kids, none of us do anymore. We can't watch anything for an hour and a half. But if you had an hour and a half lecture that I can watch in 15-minute gulps, I can grab everything out of it because people just absorb content differently now. And I think one of the things we have to do in this world as educators, when we're an educator, is deliver the content in multiple ways. Just like there's different learners, there's people have different approaches to watching content. Some people can binge watch for 3 hours. Other people have to get up every 15 minutes to go to the bathroom, brush their teeth, do something. They just fidget. I just like that this really allows you to integrate video into classroom teaching, but it allows the student to be immersed in the video the way that best matches my way of watching the video as the student.
And beyond that, we're starting to see the requirement for students to provide projects in a video format more and more. And one of the things that we can do with the Pearls and the integration with Kaltura and Panopto is maybe it's not based on a schedule. It's in a student lab where they need to create their projects. You could start an ad hoc recording straight from the front touchscreen on a Pearl Mini. You just put in the user ID, where you want it to go, push start, everything's automated, goes exactly to the folder you need it to go on the system, and that's it. It's very easy, and so it's not surprising that we're seeing schools like Harvard and Stanford and Northwestern taking off with this kind of technology, and they absolutely love the Pearls for that.
Very cool. The next vertical I want to talk about is probably the fastest growing vertical just because they're everywhere, and that's a good thing, is worship. You know, there's churches of all sizes, temples, churches, mosques, whatever you are. One of the things you want to do is bring your message to people who couldn't get to church that day. And let's face it, in today's day and age, a lot of us don't go as often as we'd like to or should, whatever you want to say, but we want to participate. It's important to us. Well, distance, live, is a way that you could do it. And live video worship is huge. And one of the things that's the biggest challenge for churches, worship, anyone, is we tend to be volunteer driven in that world. So we need products that are very easy to use the day of the service. And that's where I found we've had such great success with the Pearls, especially the Pearl Mini, because you can have one operator in the back of the room, or even the minister, if he so chooses, you know, can operate a show. He can mix a couple of cameras. He can bring up the words from his laptop for people to sing along to. It's not going to be the world's most sophisticated show, but it's going to get the job done. And most of all, it can be done by any volunteer in a matter of minutes. You can teach someone how to operate a Pearl Mini.
Absolutely. And you know, well, we could throw the Webcaster into that bin as well, because we've sold a huge number of that product to, you know, the church and worship market, partially because of its low cost and simplicity. Usually, as you were mentioning, Gary, there's two things that come up when you're talking to churches: budget, volunteers. You know, those are kind of the two things you hear all the time. And making sure that there's ease of use for the volunteers, but also not every church has $1 million AV budget. Some do, and we're happy to sell them a Pearl 2 in that case. But many of them are not quite to that level. They're just learning about live streaming. They don't even know if they're going to gain the audience yet. Many of them do, whether it's, you know, grandma who's a shut-in, can't make it to church, but she can get on Facebook, that kind of thing, you know, can really broaden the community. And Pearl Mini is a good middle fit because, like you said, you can mix a couple cameras, you can keep things basic, but also very simple, and you don't need anything else. You can do it all on one box. And when you start to add up the various different pieces of mixers and switchers and all these different pieces, Pearl Mini actually starts to become a value proposition in terms of what it can do on one device.
It is, but I want to talk about something we skipped over, and that is, let's talk about this Webcast Rex 2, because where I found it gets used in worship a lot is you have an existing mixing thing where you're mixing, say, some
sure.
videos for your internal screens. You got a basic mixer. Maybe it's from Roland, Data Video, whoever. It's got HDMI out. I could just plug the HDMI out of my mixer into the Webcast Rex 2, and now I could be streaming my videos very easily to Facebook or YouTube or any other CDN or worship CDN that I'm using. And I think that's really a great thing because not everyone's ready to replace all their gear, and now it's super easy to do. The other thing that we've seen is people will use the AViO in the same way. They'll have it run right to a laptop that's running, you know, vMix or OBS, inexpensive software. Now, someone with a laptop can just say, I'm taking the stuff from the other mix in, but maybe I'm adding a graphic. Maybe I'm adding, you know, I'll insert a little thing to give to the church or come to next Thursday's, you know, special potluck dinner, whatever we're doing, you know. So it's really cool stuff with that, and I think one of the things that you guys do well is you have products that can enable an existing solution to become a streaming solution.
Absolutely, and the Webcaster is popular in that area because you can take and start with a very inexpensive Handycam and just the Webcaster and get a church stream going, you know, the next day. Some people do use the AViO into a laptop and use software, but the Webcaster is even more simplified than that in the sense that teaching someone to use Wirecast or vMix or even OBS if you're on a tight budget, there's still a level of complexity there.
Yep.
Where the Webcaster, you take your HDMI, maybe it's from a mixer, maybe it's straight from a single camera, you use the pairing code system to link it to your Facebook or YouTube account, you push start, and you're done. It's really that simple. You don't have to know anything about configuring the software. You don't have to have a fancy laptop that maybe is out of budget. It's just very straightforward, simple, and makes it easy for just about anybody to do it.
Cool, and I want to talk about another vertical that's emerging, and you guys really brought this to our attention because you had a customer who was asking about it for use with a Pearl Mini. We hooked them up in a hospital, and they absolutely love it because they're using it for medical training. And talk to us about how now these devices, especially the Pearls, are making inroads into healthcare.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a market that Epiphan has been involved with for over 15 years. Even the origins of the company really kind of started a little bit in this area where getting medical imaging into a digital computer environment really didn't exist back then. And so we've always been there in this space, and it's getting more and more important. Sometimes it's just taking recordings for records or training or whatever it might be. Sometimes it's live streaming it for remote consultation. There's a big spectrum of possibilities here. The main thing is that with medical imaging, most devices, whether it's an ultrasound or an endoscope or any of the other tools that none of us really want to think about but are important, they all have video. They all have video outputs, and we can capture those. And they're not always your standard 720p or 1080p style signals. Sometimes they're odd signals. We design our products, and the Pearls, the AViO, any of them count as part of this. We design them to capture pretty much any signal, whether it's a standard 16:9 camera kind of thing or something totally strange. We design our products to be able to capture that so we can bring a camera and an ultrasound together, live stream that to an expert on the other side of the country. And,
or just record
make sure. Or just record it and have it for records. The Pearls especially are popular because they also have a cropping tool built into them, and sometimes this information is being used at medical conferences later. So part of confidentiality, we need to use the cropping tool to trim out any sensitive data for the patient's name and that kind of thing. So that's why the Pearls have been really, really popular within that space. But also, again, just like the worship one, it's the ease of use. Doctors, they are great at what they do, not always the greatest at being AV techs. So making sure that the product is easy for the doctor, the nurse, or anybody there to use, to start, stop, and understand what's happening without them being an expert is important.
Great. Now I want to talk about what's the booming area of streaming. And, you know, it's thank you, Mr. Twitch, or, you know, you did it, it used to be Justin TV, but I mean, just amazing. And that's eSports, 4K gameplay. You know, eSports is something that is just exploding on the world. And I want to talk about eSports a little bit because people laugh. So I got to say this. I was at a conference a year ago, Turner TV people were there. They were talking about eSports. They talked about, I had three takeaways that blew me away. Number one, they see esports on a trajectory that's faster than X Games, which blew me away, or it just, that was just like, those exports are everywhere. Second, they said that kids are getting full ride scholarships to engineering schools to do these esports. And then third, there's $1 million prize money in these games. So, you know, I'm not telling you to have your kid play esports all day, but don't poo-poo it either. I mean, this is something that's really real, and I'm seeing that, like, high schools are starting to set up their own esports teams and things like that. So it's growing, and this is where, you know, a Pearl is really great, as is the AViO 4K, because esports are really played in 4K P60. If you're going to stream or record them and you can't handle 4K P60, you're not really in esports.
Yeah, there's a lot involved there, and like I say, esports is booming. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's absolutely huge, and it's growing at an exponential rate. And you know, we've seen it used quite a bit with a variety of our products, and most often what we'll see is something like the Pearl 2 or sometimes the Pearl Mini, depending on the scale of the operation, often as the end encoder, taking in the larger broadcast flow, bringing it into the Pearl, because they just want a reliable, bulletproof encoder that's going to get the stream to maybe one or more platforms at the same time, and they know they can push a button and count on it and not worry about it. And so we've seen that quite a lot. They'll still have the larger, you know, whatever it might be in front of it, whether it's a, you know, Blackmagic or Ross or Grass Valley or whoever doing their bigger mixing and switching environment. Because the one thing about esports, especially when it's tournament style things, there's a lot of cameras involved, and bringing that all together is pretty much like a full newsroom Hollywood style thing. It's serious business.
All right. Well, we went over a half hour, and I want to keep the show going. So I want to ask is, I want to kind of end the show that's on that we did, and then come back, and we're going to do like a post-show show where we'll really go into each of the products and what they cost, because we really didn't dig into that as deeply as I would have. So I want to talk about, I want to thank you for being on the show. It was great to have you on the show.
Welcome.
The Epiphan products rock. George is a great guy, and like I said, I'd love to do one of your shows in the future. I want to talk about some upcoming shows we have that I'm really excited about. We're going to have a Adamus Shogun product roundup. We're bringing in the Bird Dog guys live from Australia. Now that show, we're going to have to do that show at 4 p.m. on a Monday so that they could be at 8 a.m. in Australia, but it's really there on Tuesday. And then we're going to re-show that show Tuesday from the Monday show, but that's because of the Australian time zone difference. So I can't wait. And then we're still going to have the folks on from LaCie to come in and talk about the new rugged SSDs that they have. So that's what we have coming up, and we're really excited about that. Now, I want to go a little bit more into the Epiphan product roundup, but I think I'm going to do is I'm going to step back, let's run the bump, and then I'll introduce that we're doing, you know, part 2 of the show.
Videoguys is available Monday through Friday. Give us a call at 1-800-323-2325. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram to stay connected with all of our updates. And you can like us on Facebook. Keep an eye out for our live videos, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.